6 months later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the vessel that had once been known as the Blood Talon, but was now renamed the Human Defiance as it approached Earth's orbital defense perimeter. The sleek, crystalline ship that had been built to hunt humans was now humanity's first true warship, and a symbol of their species' refusal to be victims in a hostile galaxy. The story of their survival and victory had spread throughout human space faster than any official communication could travel. 12 ordinary crew members from a cargo ship had accomplished what no human military force had ever managed to do by defeating the Zephyrian Empire's most elite hunting party, using nothing but determination, ingenuity, and the ability to adapt alien technology for their own purposes. Dr. Kate Murphy had established the Xenological Defense Institute on Luna, where she led teams of scientists and engineers in studying captured Zephyrian technology and developing countermeasures against other potential alien threats. Her research into crystalline energy matrices had already led to revolutionary breakthroughs in human weapons and defensive systems that would protect colonists across the outer worlds. The medical facilities at the Institute were filled with volunteers from across human space who wanted to be prepared for encounters with hostile alien species. Dr. Murphy's protocols for treating injuries from energy weapons and adapting to alien environments had become standard training for all human exploration and military personnel throughout the colonies. Sam Rodriguez headed the new Human Engineering Corps that was responsible for reverse engineering alien technology and teaching human mechanics and engineers how to adapt captured equipment for human use. His motto that any technology built by intelligent beings could be rebuilt better by human hands had become the foundation of humanity's rapid technological advancement. The Engineering Corps had established training facilities on dozens of worlds, where human technicians learned to work with crystalline energy systems, gravity manipulation devices, and other advanced technologies that had been captured from various alien species. Rodriguez's teams were constantly developing new applications for alien technology that even the original creators had never imagined. Tony Walsh had become the chief instructor at the Corps' main facility, where he taught thousands of human engineers and mechanics the principles of adaptive technology that had allowed 12 cargo haulers to turn Zephyrian hunting equipment into tools of liberation. His hands-on approach to learning alien systems had revolutionized how humans approached unfamiliar technology. Lisa Carter accepted a commission as the first director of Human Special Operations with responsibility for training elite military units in anti-alien combat tactics and survival techniques. Her methods, based on persistence hunting adaptive strategy and the psychological warfare of turning predator-prey relationships upside down, had become the foundation of human military doctrine throughout the colonies. The Special Operations Training centers that Carter established on frontier worlds were producing soldiers and officers who could face any alien threat with confidence and skill. Her tactical manuals were required reading for every human military commander, and her techniques had already been used successfully against several other hostile alien species. Amy Brooks led the Geological Survey Corps that was responsible for identifying worlds and resources that could be useful in humanity's ongoing technological revolution. Her discovery that many alien technologies relied on naturally occurring crystalline formations had led to the establishment of mining operations on dozens of previously unexplored worlds. The Survey Corps had identified over 200 worlds with mineral resources that were essential for producing human versions of alien technology. Amy's teams were constantly discovering new applications for exotic materials, and her research had made humanity largely independent of alien technology suppliers within just 6 months. Ryan Bell commanded the Communications Intelligence Division that monitored alien transmissions throughout human space and provided early warning of potential threats to human colonies and shipping. His ability to intercept and decode alien communications had prevented dozens of attacks and provided valuable intelligence about hostile alien activities. The Intelligence Division had established monitoring stations throughout human space that could detect and analyze alien communications from hundreds of light years away. Bell's teams had successfully identified and tracked the movements of several hostile alien fleets, allowing human forces to intercept them before they could attack civilian targets. The other crew members from the New Dawn had all found important roles in humanity's rapidly expanding defensive capabilities. Each person brought unique skills and experiences that contributed to the species' growing ability to defend itself against alien threats and to thrive in a galaxy that had previously seemed overwhelmingly hostile. But perhaps the most important change was in how humans viewed themselves and their place in the galactic community. They were no longer the frightened newcomers scrambling for scraps among ancient civilizations that viewed them as nothing more than primitive animals. The 12 survivors of Caraxes Prime had proven something that would echo across the stars for generations to come. Humans were not just another weak species to be hunted and enslaved by more advanced civilizations. They were survivors and adapters and fighters who had evolved on a world that had tested them for millions of years before they ever reached for the stars. When pushed to the edge of extinction, they did not break or surrender, but instead found ways to turn their enemies' strengths against them. Word of humanity's victory over the Zephyrian hunting party had spread throughout the galaxy, and the reaction from other species ranged from amazement to fear to grudging respect. The Zephyrian Empire itself had begun to crumble, as subject species realized that their supposedly invincible masters could be defeated by primitive mammals with the right combination of courage, determination, and adaptability. Several alien civilizations had already approached human representatives with offers of trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. The galaxy was beginning to recognize that Earth's children were not prey animals but predators, who had simply been sleeping until someone was foolish enough to wake them up. Jake Morrison looked out at the blue and white marble that was humanity's birth world and felt a deep sense of satisfaction at what he and his crew had accomplished. They had set out as simple cargo haulers trying to make an honest living in the dangerous outer systems, but they had returned as the founders of humanity's rise to become a major power in galactic civilization. In the end, 12 humans with mining, equipment determination, and an absolute refusal to give up had accomplished what entire civilizations had failed to achieve. They had shown the universe that sometimes the prey bites back, and when humans bite back, even mighty empires can fall. Commander Veltar stood alone in the command center of the Blood Talon, watching his tactical displays with growing horror as the impossible became reality before his eyes. In just 4 days, 12 primitive humans had systematically destroyed an elite hunting party that had successfully eliminated prey on over 100 worlds across the galaxy. The tactical analysis system that had served him faithfully for decades was completely useless in this situation because it had no framework for understanding prey that refused to behave like prey. The humans were using tactics and strategies that seemed to combine primitive cunning with advanced technological adaptation in ways that his computer could not predict or counter. His remaining hunters were reporting increasingly disturbing encounters with their supposed prey. The humans had somehow learned to use Zephyrian technology better than the Zephyrians themselves and were modifying captured equipment in ways that should have been impossible without decades of advanced engineering training and specialized knowledge. Dr. Kate Murphy detected the energy buildup first as she monitored the various sensors that Ryan Bell had rigged throughout their cave system using modified alien equipment. The orbital weapon systems aboard the Blood Talon were charging to full power, and there could be only one reason for such a massive energy signature. Commander Veltar had decided to end the hunt by destroying the entire moon rather than face the humiliation of defeat. Lisa Carter looked at the collection of captured and modified Zephyrian equipment that filled their hidden command post and made a decision that would have seemed insane just a few days earlier. Instead of trying to find a place to hide from the orbital bombardment, they were going to use the aliens' own technology to transport themselves directly aboard the enemy ship and end this fight once and for all. Sam Rodriguez ran through the calculations one more time as he prepared the jury-rigged transporter system they had built, using components salvaged from 3 different Zephyrian anti-gravity platforms. The energy requirements were enormous, and they would only have one chance to get this right because the power drain would completely exhaust their captured equipment. The plan that Amy Brooks had developed was both elegant and dangerous in its simplicity. The crystalline ore deposits throughout the moon were resonating at frequencies that interfered with Zephyrian shielding systems. If they could transport a sufficient quantity of the raw crystalline material directly into the power core of the Blood Talon, it would create a cascade failure that would disable the ship's defenses. Tony Walsh had spent hours preparing the explosive package that would serve as their delivery system. The crystalline ore had been packed into a modified Zephyrian weapon casing, along with conventional explosives and a timer system cobbled together from mining equipment and alien electronics. The entire device was small enough to transport, but powerful enough to cripple the enemy ship. Ryan Bell was monitoring the Zephyrian communication channels and providing real-time intelligence about the status of their preparations for orbital bombardment. Commander Veltar was coordinating with his weapons officers, and the countdown to planetary destruction had already begun. They had less than 10 minutes before the Blood Talon would fire on the moon below. Jake Morrison gathered his crew around the improvised transporter platform as Sam made the final adjustments to their jury-rigged equipment. Every person would be needed for the assault on the enemy ship, because they could not know what kind of resistance they would face once they materialized aboard the Blood Talon. This was their only chance to turn the tables on their captors, and they could not afford to fail. The transporter activation sent waves of crystalline energy through the cave system, as 12 humans and their explosive package disappeared from the forest moon and materialized directly in the command center of the Zephyrian hunting vessel. Commander Veltar turned toward them with all 6 arms reaching for weapons, but Lisa Carter was faster with a captured plasma rifle already aimed at his center mass. The explosion of crystalline ore in the ship's power core created exactly the cascade failure that Amy had predicted based on her analysis of Zephyrian technology. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power systems went offline, and the orbital bombardment sequence automatically aborted as safety systems engaged to prevent accidental discharge without proper targeting control. Commander Veltar found himself facing 12 determined humans armed with modified versions of his own people's advanced weapons, while his ship drifted powerless in orbit around the moon he had planned to destroy. The tactical situation had reversed so completely that his analytical mind could barely process what had happened to him and his supposedly superior hunting expedition. The remaining Zephyrian crew members on the Blood Talon were completely unprepared for close-quarters combat with enemies who had spent days learning to use their own technology against them. Lisa organized the humans into efficient combat teams that swept through the ship, systematically disabling resistance and securing critical areas before the aliens could mount any effective counterattack. Sam and Tony worked together to restore partial power to the ship's systems, while making sure the Zephyrians could not regain control of their own vessel. The crystalline technology that had seemed so advanced and mysterious just days earlier was now familiar territory for the human engineers who had learned to understand it better than its creators. Dr. Murphy and Amy established a secure command post in the ship's medical bay, where they could monitor the status of both the captured Zephyrians and their own crew members. The aliens were physically resilient, but they seemed to be in a state of psychological shock at being defeated by creatures they had considered primitive prey animals. Ryan took control of the ship's communication systems and began broadcasting a message to the rest of the Zephyrian Empire, announcing that the Blood Talon was now under human control, and that the legendary hunting party of Commander Veltar had been completely defeated by 12 cargo haulers and miners from a species the aliens had underestimated. Jake Morrison stood on the command deck of the captured alien vessel and looked out at the stars, knowing that everything had changed for humanity in just 4 days. They had proven that humans could not only survive against seemingly impossible odds but could adapt and overcome enemies with technology far superior to their own. The galaxy would never be the same again. The forest moon of Caraxes Prime stretched endlessly in every direction as far as the eye could see. Ancient trees reached toward the sky like massive pillars supporting a green ceiling that blocked out most of the sunlight. The air was thick, with moisture, and the sounds of alien creatures echoed through the dense undergrowth. Jake Morrison and his 11 crew members stood in a small clearing surrounded by towering trees that reminded them of the old growth forests back on Earth. The similarity was no accident, as Commander Veltar had explained with cruel amusement. The Zephyrians chose hunting grounds that would give their prey false hope by seeming familiar and safe. The energy cages that had held them prisoner during the 3-day journey from their capture point had finally been deactivated. Jake flexed his stiff muscles and looked around at his crew, trying to assess their situation. Everyone appeared to be unhurt, but he could see the fear and anger in their eyes as they realized what was about to happen to them. Lisa Carter immediately began studying their surroundings with the trained eye of a former Marine. The gravity felt almost exactly like Earth normal, and the atmosphere was breathable without any equipment. The trees were similar to Earth species, but not quite the same, and she noticed that some of the sounds coming from the forest were definitely not from any creatures she recognized. Commander Veltar hovered above them on an anti-gravity platform that glowed with the same crystalline energy as his ship. His 6 arms gestured dramatically as he explained the rules of the hunt to his captive prey. The humans had 8 hours to reach a beacon located at the peak of the mountain that rose above the forest canopy several kilometers away. The 6 Zephyrian hunters who would be pursuing them were elite predators who had successfully hunted prey on over 100 different worlds. Each hunter was armed with plasma weapons that could kill at long range, and they used anti-gravity platforms that would allow them to move swiftly through the forest canopy above the slower ground-bound humans. Sam Rodriguez listened carefully to every word, while his engineer's mind automatically began analyzing the alien technology around them. The anti-gravity platforms seemed to use some kind of crystalline energy matrix, and the weapons appeared to be powered by the same source. He noticed that the Zephyrian equipment all had a similar design aesthetic that suggested it was mass-produced, rather than custom-built. Tony Walsh was studying the way the aliens moved and handled their equipment. Despite their advanced technology, the Zephyrians seemed almost clumsy in the way they used their tools. They relied completely on their machines, and showed no sign of the hands-on mechanical knowledge that every human learned from childhood. Their overconfidence in their technology might be a weakness that could be exploited. Dr. Kate Murphy was observing the aliens themselves, looking for any biological weaknesses she could identify. The Zephyrians were clearly adapted for life in low-gravity environments, and their movements seemed somewhat awkward in the Earth-normal gravity of the hunting ground. Their pale crystalline skin might be sensitive to certain types of damage, and their 6-armed physiology suggested they had evolved as climbing creatures rather than ground-dwellers. Ryan Bell was trying to understand the communication devices the aliens used and listening carefully to any transmissions between them. The translators they wore seemed to work both ways, and he wondered if it might be possible to intercept or interfere with their communications. Any advantage they could gain over their technologically superior hunters might mean the difference between life and death. Amy Brooks was already studying the soil and rock formations around their landing site. Her trained eye could identify the mineral composition of the area, and she noticed several types of crystals in the soil that seemed similar to the crystalline technology the Zephyrians used. There might be resources on this moon that could be useful if they could figure out how to access them. Commander Veltar finished explaining the rules and announced that the hunt would begin in exactly 1 hour. The Zephyrian hunters activated their weapons and tested their anti-gravity platforms before disappearing into the forest canopy above. Their cruel laughter echoed through the trees as they spread out to begin tracking their human prey. As soon as the aliens were gone, Jake gathered his crew around him and began organizing their desperate attempt to survive. Lisa took charge of planning their route to the mountain, while Sam and Tony began examining the area for anything that might be useful as tools or weapons. The others spread out to gather information about their environment and look for any advantages they could find. The first thing they discovered was that the forest floor was covered with fallen branches and rocks that could be used as primitive tools. Amy found several types of crystalline minerals embedded in the rocks that seemed to glow with faint energy when exposed to sunlight. She collected samples of everything she could find while wondering if there was some connection to the Zephyrian technology. Ryan managed to detect faint energy signatures from the direction the hunters had gone, and realized he might be able to track their movements using the electromagnetic fields their equipment generated. Tony found some metal debris from previous hunts that could be fashioned into crude tools with enough time and effort. Dr. Murphy discovered edible plants and a clean water source, which would be essential if they were going to survive longer than the 8 hours the aliens expected. She also found evidence that other hunted species had passed through this area, including some that had clearly fought back against their pursuers, based on the damage to trees and undergrowth. Lisa developed a plan that would take them through the densest part of the forest where the anti-gravity platforms would have trouble maneuvering between the tree trunks. They would move slowly and carefully, using every bit of cover available while trying to avoid detection by the hunters above. Jake looked at his crew and felt a surge of pride at how quickly they had adapted to their impossible situation. These were not soldiers or warriors, but ordinary people who had found themselves in an extraordinary situation. Yet each of them was contributing their skills and knowledge to give them the best possible chance of survival. The hour was almost up when they heard the first sounds of the hunters beginning their pursuit. Energy weapons discharged somewhere behind them, and alien voices called out to each other through the forest. The deadly game had begun, and 12 humans were about to discover just how dangerous they could be when their lives were on the line. 3 days had passed since the hunt began, and Commander Veltar was facing a situation he had never encountered in his long career as an elite hunter. Half of his hunting party had vanished into the forest, leaving behind only their abandoned equipment and strange modifications to the terrain that made no sense to his analytical mind. The humans should have been dead or captured within the first few hours, but instead they had somehow managed to turn his carefully planned hunt into a nightmare of confusion and loss. His tactical displays showed no trace of the missing hunters, and their last known positions were marked only by disturbing signs that something had gone terribly wrong. Sam Rodriguez crouched in the hidden cave system that Amy Brooks had discovered, using her geological expertise to map the underground passages that ran beneath the mountain. The mining engineer had spent the past 2 days studying the Zephyrian weapons and equipment they had captured from the first hunter who had fallen into their carefully prepared trap. The alien technology was far more advanced than anything humans had developed, but it was also surprisingly predictable in its design. Every piece of equipment used the same crystalline energy matrices and the same basic control systems. Once Sam understood the underlying principles, he found that the alien devices were actually quite simple to modify and reprogram. Tony Walsh was working beside Sam, using his mechanical knowledge to physically alter the captured Zephyrian equipment for human use. The anti-gravity platform they had taken from the first hunter was being converted into a mobile drilling unit that could carve new tunnels through the mountain rock. The plasma weapons were being modified to work as cutting tools and energy sources. Lisa Carter had established a command post deeper in the cave system where she was coordinating the increasingly complex operations against their alien hunters. Her military training had taught her how to organize resistance movements, and she was applying those same principles to their desperate struggle for survival on the alien hunting ground. Dr. Kate Murphy had made a discovery that was changing everything they thought they knew about their situation. The crystalline minerals that Amy had found scattered throughout the forest were not just similar to Zephyrian technology, they were actually the raw materials used to create that technology. The aliens had chosen this moon as a hunting ground because it contained the resources they needed to maintain their equipment. Ryan Bell had successfully infiltrated the Zephyrian communication network using their own technology against them. From his position deep in the cave system, he could monitor every transmission between the remaining hunters and their command ship in orbit. The aliens were becoming increasingly frantic as their elite hunting party continued to disappear one by one. Amy Brooks had discovered something even more important than the mineral resources scattered across the moon's surface. Her analysis of the local geology revealed that the entire moon was essentially a massive crystalline formation that resonated with the same energy frequencies used by Zephyrian technology. With the right modifications, they could potentially turn the entire moon into a weapon against their captors. The breakthrough had come when Sam realized that the aliens had never learned to truly understand their own technology. They used devices that had been created by their ancestors thousands of years ago, and simply followed predetermined patterns without any real comprehension of the underlying science. Humans, on the other hand, were natural improvisers who could adapt and modify anything they could get their hands on. Jake Morrison had been quietly observing the Zephyrian patrol patterns from carefully concealed positions throughout the forest. The alien hunters moved with arrogant confidence, but they followed predictable routines that revealed their fundamental lack of experience with prey that could fight back. They expected their quarry to run in panic, not to study their weaknesses and plan coordinated attacks. The first hunter had died when he flew his anti-gravity platform directly into a trap that Sam had rigged using mining explosives and crystalline resonators. The aliens' confused screams had echoed through the forest before being cut short by the carefully timed detonation that brought him crashing to the ground where Lisa and her team were waiting. The second hunter had vanished during the night when he made the mistake of landing his platform to investigate what appeared to be human tracks. Tony had spent hours preparing a deadfall trap using fallen trees and rocks that completely buried the alien before he could call for help. His equipment was quickly salvaged and added to their growing arsenal of modified alien technology. The third hunter had been eliminated when he followed a false trail that Amy had created, using her knowledge of geology to mislead his sensors. Ryan had used the captured communication equipment to jam his distress signals, while Dr. Murphy used a modified plasma weapon to disable his anti-gravity platform. The alien had been captured alive, and his equipment added to their collection. Commander Veltar was beginning to understand that he was dealing with a species unlike any his people had encountered before. The humans were not just running from his hunters. They were actively hunting the hunters using tactics and strategies that seemed impossible for a primitive species to develop. His tactical computer could not provide any useful analysis of their behavior because it had no data on prey that became predators. The remaining 3 hunters were growing increasingly nervous as they realized their prey had somehow acquired their own advanced weapons and equipment. The communication channels were filled with confused reports of modified technology and coordinated attacks that should have been impossible for the primitive humans to organize. Jake knew they were reaching a critical point in their struggle for survival. They had successfully eliminated half of the alien hunting party, but the remaining hunters would be more cautious, and Commander Veltar would eventually realize he needed to change his tactics. The humans needed to strike decisively before their enemies could adapt to the new situation. Lisa gathered the crew together in their hidden command post to plan their next move. They had proven they could fight back against individual hunters, but now they needed to take the offensive and strike at the heart of their enemy's power. The time had come to take the fight directly to Commander Veltar and his command ship in orbit above the moon. Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked the cargo bay readings one more time. The mining operation on Delta 7 had been successful, and his crew was heading home with enough rare metals to keep them comfortable for months. His ship, the New Dawn, was not the fastest or prettiest vessel in space, but it got the job done and had never let him down in 15 years of hauling cargo across the outer systems. Lisa Carter sat in the co-pilot seat running final system checks before they jumped to hyperspace. She had been a Marine before joining Jake's crew 2 years ago, and her military training made her the perfect second in command. Her sharp eyes caught everything, and her steady hands could fix almost any problem that came up during their long trips between worlds. In the engine room, Sam Rodriguez was making sure their hyperdrive was ready for the long journey home. The former engineer had worked on everything from small fighters to massive battleships before deciding he preferred the freedom of working on cargo ships. His skilled hands could make any machine run better than when it was first built, and the crew trusted him completely with their lives. Tony Walsh was checking the mining equipment they had used on Delta 7 to make sure everything was properly stored and secured for the jump. The young mechanic had learned his trade working in the shipyards above Earth before joining Jake's crew 6 months ago. His knowledge of different alien technologies had already saved them time and credits on several occasions. Dr. Kate Murphy was in the medical bay, making sure their supplies were properly stocked for the journey home. The ship's doctor had served on exploration vessels for years before deciding she wanted a quieter life aboard a cargo ship. Her medical knowledge had saved more than one crew member during their dangerous mining operations. Ryan Bell sat at the communications station monitoring local space traffic and checking for any messages from other ships or stations. The communications officer had spent years working for the colonial fleet before joining the merchant marine. His ability to intercept and decode alien transmissions had helped them avoid pirates and other dangers many times. Amy Brooks was in her small laboratory analyzing samples of the rare metals they had mined on Delta 7. The geologist could identify valuable minerals just by looking at them, and her expertise had made Jake's crew very wealthy over the past 3 years. Her knowledge of planetary geology had also helped them find the best mining sites on dozens of worlds. The other 5 crew members were busy with their own duties as Jake prepared to give the order to jump to hyperspace. They had been working together for years, and each person knew exactly what they needed to do. The New Dawn was more than just a ship to them, it was their home, and they were a family that looked out for each other, no matter what dangers they faced. Jake was about to activate the hyperdrive when Ryan's voice came over the intercom with alarm in his tone. Unknown ships were approaching fast from 3 directions, and they were using technology that Ryan had never seen before. The ships were moving too fast to be human vessels, and their energy signatures were completely alien. Lisa immediately began powering up their defensive systems. But the New Dawn was a cargo ship, not a warship, and their weapons were designed to deal with pirates, not advanced alien technology. She knew they were in serious trouble when her sensors showed the approaching ships were at least twice the size of their vessel, and armed with weapons that could destroy them in seconds. The alien ships surrounded the New Dawn before Jake could even think about trying to run. Beautiful crystalline vessels that looked more like works of art than machines of war moved with deadly grace through space. Their hulls seemed to glow with internal light, and energy patterns flowed across their surfaces like living things. A powerful beam struck the New Dawn, and suddenly, every system on the ship went dead. The lights went out, the engines stopped, and even their emergency power failed completely. Jake and his crew found themselves floating in darkness as the alien ships moved closer to their helpless vessel. Bright lights filled the cargo bay as the aliens transported aboard using technology that was far beyond anything humans had developed. Tall creatures with 6 arms and burning red eyes stepped out of the light, carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Their skin was pale and seemed to shimmer like crystal, and they moved with the confident grace of apex predators. The leader of the aliens was taller than the others, and wore what looked like armor made from living metal that changed colors as he moved. His 6 arms ended in hands that had too many fingers, and his red eyes seemed to look right through the humans, as if they were nothing more than animals. When he spoke, his voice was translated by a device that made it sound like grinding. Metal Commander Veltar told the humans they had been selected for a great honor. They would be taken to the hunting grounds on Caraxes Prime, where they would participate in the Grand Hunt. The Zephyrian Empire had been hunting inferior species across the galaxy for 3 centuries, and humans would provide excellent sport for their elite hunters. The humans were locked in energy cages that prevented them from moving or speaking to each other. Jake watched helplessly as his crew was loaded aboard the alien hunting ship like cargo. The Zephyrians treated them with the casual indifference of farmers loading livestock, and it was clear they considered humans to be nothing more than amusing prey animals. As the hunting ship Blood Talon jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward their fate. Jake caught Lisa's eye through the energy bars of her cage. He saw something in her expression that gave him hope despite their desperate situation. She was not looking at their captors with fear, but with the calculating gaze of a soldier studying her enemy for weaknesses. The Zephyrians had made their first mistake by underestimating their human prey. They would soon discover that humans were not just another weak species to be hunted for sport.